Hang in there. It is.
Smylie Kaufman for 61. Wow.
I'm Smylie Kaufman, and this is The Smiley Show.
Welcome to a major championship edition of The Smiley Show. And the only thing that I regret to inform you is that we are not together in the same place this week. The first time this year in 2024 that we're not doing that, but that's okay.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I know it's a real shame. And you know what? There are a lot of reasons why it bums me out, but the biggest one is the one that's sitting on your head right now, because I would be merching so hard if I was there with you, and that might be the first hat that I'd buy. That is a slick lid right there, buddy.
Thank you. Yeah, light blue rope hat. For those that aren't watching on YouTube, repped it out there on the golf course today. Felt pretty confident in it, and yeah, it's a good looking hat. It was on my bed when I got here, and as I look out the window and see the flags flying of the Open Championship, I mean, it's a beautiful day. You can't beat this spot.
Cannot beat it. I was just there very recently in Scotland, in the same hotel you're staying in now. So shout out to the Marine Hotel Royal Troon. The place we got to start this episode, actually, Smiley, is another big shout out, another big thanks to our partner WearSPF for presenting this show. And here's the fun sort of angle we're taking on it this week is in setting up this sort of sponsorship. We learned something for the first time. We learned that if you go to your weather app on your phone, anyone that has an iPhone and probably a Droid, Android, whatever else as well, you can go to your weather app and you can find the UV index. And so when you go and you look at that UV index, if you're anywhere 3 or above on that index, you should be putting sunscreen on. And the reason this is applicable is I was just in Scotland, and there are a lot of days that were overcast. And it looked a lot like what it looks like right outside right now at Royal Troon. And I maybe did not reapply as much as I needed to and was a little bit worse for the wear. So this is a great reminder as part of this partnership that even if it is overcast, you got to put sunscreen on. And Smiley, it looks like that's going to be sort of the story of at least Thursday and Friday at Troon. Maybe a little bit overcast, but the UV index is going to be, I think, 4 on Thursday and up to 6 on Friday. So got to make sure you put your WearSPF on this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that I picked up on just learning about, skincare when it comes to, protecting your skin with sunscreen, with SPF, I always wondered, when it ain't sunny out, do I need to wear sunscreen? Because, that it's pretty natural to not want to wear sunscreen when the sun isn't out. But like you're talking about, you're able to kind of check how bad the UV light is that day. If it's 4, if it's 6, you're still definitely you could definitely get some sunburns and lose some hydration. Even on a day like today, I don't think I had one water out there as well. So if you put some sunscreen on like I did, you actually get some hydration from the sunscreen. So that's an added benefit from using it, applying regularly. So a couple different times today, even though it wasn't sunny, I was lathering up a little bit, making sure that, I wasn't walking off the golf course looking like a lobster.
Yes, that is key. That was our big learn last week, is that in wearing sunscreen, it keeps you from getting dehydrated. This week's big learn, go check that UV index in your weather app on your phone to make sure that if it's 3 or above, you're applying sunscreen, even if it doesn't look like the sun is peeking out outside. So, and in that process, if you're looking for some sunscreen, you can go to wearspf.com and use the code SMILEY50, which is SMYLIE50. That's buy one, get one on any of their products. We also talked last week about the sunscreen mooches. Get a spray bottle for you, get a spray bottle for your buddy who's going to ask to use it. Get some sticks, whatever it is. Make sure you're reapplying out there on the course. And especially, when you're at home watching the Open this week and it's a little overcast, and it's a good reminder. Like, always put on sunscreen.
And it's kind of nice too when you're not playing golf and you're just out here commentating, writing notes, getting ready for the Open Championship, is I don't have to worry about, I can put the sunscreen on my hands and lather it up. And I'm not saying SPF's sunscreen is the sticky kind to where, you feel like you're going to lose your grip, because it's not. There's plenty worse brands that it feels like, oh, this is a little slick. But it is nice to not have to worry about, just kind of rubbing it in. But there's a way to do it.
You don't have to do the seal hands. You know what I mean? That's the kind of what you want to avoid. You can just go right on the hands. Yeah.
If you're watching on YouTube, that's the way I do it. I spray and then try to rub it in so you don't want to have these bad boys slick holding the golf club.
Or you just hope that your caddy really kind of water that towel down nice and good and just get in there and just, rub it down in there and clean it off. But yes, it's however you do it, make sure you do it because sun care is really important. And again, go to WearSPF.com and use the code Smiley50 for buy one, get one. So that is our little, Wear SPF primer for the week, and very appreciative to them for presenting the show. And we'll get a little further into the show, into that weather report that we mentioned, and how it's going to impact both sides of the draw. Maybe which guys you should be playing or shouldn't be playing, based on how that weather is going to shake out those first 2 days. But before we do that, Smiley, I want to hit the rewind button a little bit because you played in one Open Championship in 2016. It was right here, right outside your window at Royal Troon. And so I want to get a little bit of your perspective on what it was like when you played it and what you saw when you were out there today. But first, I'd like to kind of throw some fun facts at the audience. So Smylie was shot 72, 76, finished 6 over, missed the cut by 2 shots. Cut line was 4 over, but you beat quite a few people, buddy. You beat Louis Oosthuizen by 6 shots. You beat Matt Fitzpatrick by 5 shots. You beat Billy Horschel by 4 shots. He had the dreaded 67.85, which looked a lot like my gin handicap page after going to Scotland a couple weeks ago. You beat John Daly by 3 shots. You beat Hideki Matsuyama by 2 shots. And you beat Shane Lowry, Tommy Fleetwood, and Colt Knost by a shot. So listen.
Oh, I beat Colt. Let's go.
You beat Colt. Listen, it wasn't all bad in 2016. Of course, you want to make the cut, but you beat some notable names. So I just tell me about your memories that week playing in this tournament, playing the postage stamp and the wave where you got the tough win and everything else. What was it like playing in that Open?
Well, I don't know how many I missed the cut by, but I do.
2.
I missed the cut by 2.
Yeah.
Are you able to pull up my front 9 scoring stats, or is that how far deep were you in there? Because I remember playing the back 9 incredibly well and the front 9 very poor. And the front 9 is not that difficult, really not that hard after going out and watching today. And the back 9 could not have been more like I can't believe how hard this back 9 is. If this wind like we have out of the Northwest was here all week, it would be insane watching these guys play in it. But it's going to be a southwest wind, which makes it a little easier as far as the direction of the wind. And the guys will have it a little bit of a break on the back 9. But it is such a fun golf course, one that I really do think tests every single aspect of your game. With the ball striking, it's something I think as we go on in this episode, you're going to start to hear our one and done picks and the guys that we're picking this week. I think you'll see us kind of lean to those ball striking stats. And after being out there today, that just kind of confirmed, that half the golf course, it really feels like you got to be a very good middle to long iron player, where the front 9 of the golf course, you have to be very intelligent in where you position your golf ball and be very solid with your wedges and take advantage of par 5s. So it's a really odd mix because most of the time in an 18-hole round, you have hard holes mixed with easy holes, and you have different wind directions, golf course going different directions. This course, the first 7 holes all go the same way, same wind direction, very similar type holes, not long, a lot of wedges. And then you flip around, play the postage stamp, which is a diabolical hole, can be at least, can be very easy. And then you get to 9, 10, and it doesn't stop. Like you can get on bogey trains out there so quickly on the back 9. You can make just huge numbers on the 11th hole. There's a couple other holes too, like 13 is ridiculously hard, 15 so hard, and the par 3s 14 and 17 are just insane. So I definitely want to get into depth. I can go hole by hole, but this is one I'm really excited about. This is a great way to end this major season. You know, Valhalla was just kind of just a waste as far as being able to test the best guys. This week, you're gonna see the best come to the top of this leaderboard.
So at your Open 2016 at Troon, you played the back nine even par over 2 days. In fact, if you'd not doubled the 18th hole in the first round, you would have played it 2 under. And
I played so good on the back.
You came back and you birdied 18 in the second round to get you a little closer to that cut line. So it was the front nine that really kind of did you some damage there.
The postage stamp. I mean, a triple, I think.
Yes. Let's see here. Let me go round 2. Yes, you tripled the postage stamp. But
in the damn right bunker, and I looked at it today too, because like I got into that bunker and hit a shot because you get in there and it's deep, and the reason why the postage stamp is hard is because that bunker is not green side on the right, like it's not up against the right side of the green, so you can't chunk and run anything. If you hit anything chunky, it's coming back to you, so you have to hit it, you have to clip it perfectly, and you have to hit it in a 7-yard gap. And if you don't pull it off and you hit it thin, you're on the other side, then you're going to be going back the other way. So that's why it's hard, because you have to commit so much to the shot and being able to hit it precisely in that little distance, which is not a difficult shot. But when you get in there in the tournament, all you're thinking about is don't screw this up.
Well, and it's a virtual impossibility if the wind is up, like it was for you, where you talked about hitting a 7-iron in the morning wave and Phil Mickelson having a gap wedge in the afternoon wave. And so that can really play a huge difference. And so we are going to get into that weather. Now, you mentioned Valhalla and the PGA Championship earlier this year and the scoring. And if you went back and you looked at the very top of that 2016 Open Championship leaderboard, you might think, oh, we're in for another scoring fest. That is not the case. It is a really interesting study in major championship history to go back and look at that year where Henrik Stenson wins at 20 under. Phil Mickelson finishes second at 17 under and talks about how stunned he was. He'd never played that good and not won a tournament ever before in his life. And third place in the B flight was JB Holmes at 6 under. And so, I mean, just mind-blowing stuff from Henrik and Phil at the top of that leaderboard that week. I think it's interesting looking at what they did well and how they got to the top of the leaderboard. Famously, Henrik Stenson hit that 3-wood off the tee and was incredibly accurate with that, and then played, hit his long irons phenomenally well all week long. And so in looking at that and trying to construct a profile for who we think is going to succeed this week. So he led the field that week with 25 birdies and an eagle, made 7 bogeys, no doubles. Phil at 17 under made 19 birdies, also made an eagle, 4 bogeys, no doubles. And then you go to JB, who is 6 under, 4 bogeys and 3 doubles. So, effectively, mathematically, it's 10 doubles. So it feels like a week where, man, driving accuracy is going to get rewarded a lot. And then precision with the approach game is going to get rewarded a lot, because to your point, if you miss those greens and you end up in some of those pop bunkers, that's where you start bringing those big numbers into play.
And Royal Troon is similar to like Royal St. George's, and that the pot bunkers are a big problem from the fairway. If you drive it in one of these fairway bunkers, you're not going to be able to get to the green. There's not one fairway bunker that I saw that allows you the opportunity to advance it onto the green. So the whole week, it's all about being comfortable about knowing the rollouts of how far your ball is going to be rolling on the ground. So the first hole today, I was talking to John Ellis. He said he was watching Xander's group play the first 2 holes, and Xander was hitting 5-iron both into the bunker on 1 and 2. So the ball in the morning was already rolling out, and that's something that I picked up on with the fairways. Although it's been a wet season, the fairways are firm, and especially downwind, really firm. And I'm looking at the book here, and it's 254 yards to that first fairway bunker on 1. 5 irons getting there. Today down off the right, 252 to that same bunker on 2. 1, 2, and 3 are very similar starts. and 5 irons were getting there. So it's a golf course that I thought Adam Scott today, watching him on the back nine, he said of something that was so intelligent. He said, I like to get to Open Championships 10 days early. So I came, before the Scottish to play, to get comfortable with the golf course, because I feel like if you're looking at the yardage book at an Open Championship, like you're not doing it right. Like you need to have the feel and understanding of the golf course and how it plays, which is why he's been so successful in Open Championships. And maybe because he just understands how the golf course is going to react in different conditions. And last thing I'll leave you with on that topic is that we had a really interesting conversation with Jack Nicklaus at the Memorial Championship during a TV break. This actually would have made for great TV. And one of our analysts, I can't remember who it was, asked Jack how he prepared for the major championships. Like, what was your plan that you put together? And he said, well, I didn't put a plan together. And like, I kind of was on the golf course just walking aimlessly because I wasn't in the booth. And then Jack goes on this just storytelling about how he at the Open Championships would get there, a week and a half in advance and just play golf. Didn't necessarily put a plan together. All he did was just go and play the golf course in different conditions, so that when he went out and played during the tournament, he was just able to feel like it was, a course that he was comfortable with, and that he could just react and know what the ball was going to do on the ground, which kind of just echoes what Adam Scott just said about, hey, the yardage book is great to look at and you need to use it, but also like you need to have a general feel of how this golf course is going to play.
That is the thing that, again, in my very, very limited experience playing golf and overseas, specifically Scotland, that delighted me the most is how much the ground game comes into play. And you're early on the trip and your caddy's he's giving you a number and then handing you a 9-iron, and you're like, did you read this thing upside down? Or did you mean to hand me a 6-iron instead? He's like, no, you hit it right there, and that thing's going to hit, roll and roll and roll. And so the firmness of those courses, is unbelievable. And then when you mix in elements like the wind, I mean, it's amazing the different types of shots that are needed to kind of succeed on these sort of venues. So I think that, a guy that, of course, off the tee, if you can be precise and find fairways and avoid, hazards for sure. And then also kind of, approaching greens, with precision and be creative too,
It's really not that tricky on the front nine. With the irons that you're hitting. It's, we're talking with how firm it is, we're talking about 5-4 irons. These guys are hitting a lot on the front nine. I mean, that's simple shots for these guys to get in the fairways.
And you're just talking about the tee right here, just to be clear,
off
right?
The tee.
Off the tee, 4 and 5 irons, fine
and
fairway.
Then you're hitting wedge. Yeah. That's how short the front nine can play. I had heard that Bryson had drove in on the first, second, third, and the 7th greens.
Wow.
So if you want to factor that into your Bryson this week, and I'll give you the numbers on this, because the first hole is a 366-yard par 4. Today it was down off the right, and it's a perfect driver for Bryson there. So like first hole, he's able to drive the green. Second hole, 389, and that one's, I don't really know how he did it there, because there's like 3 pop bunkers that sit 36 yards away, which you would imagine like 345 cover down off the right. I mean, he's got to get like a 1 bounce over those bunkers, you would think, because that's pretty insane, but maybe he can do it. And then the third hole, he drove it, but also Ludwig Oberg told me today he drove it on the front of the 3rd green. And this is a hole that has a little burn that runs through the middle of the fairway at about 281 to it. The cover on the left side is probably 290. And if you do carry it, you could see the whiteness in the ground. Like the fairway just looks like it's going to bounce and be firm. So if you cover it, it's going to have good, it's 64 yards from the end of the burn to the green. It's easily getting that. So if you cover it, as Ludwig told me he did today, he said, yeah, it rolled up right on the front of the green. So it's such an interesting golf course, because if you play it aggressively and you pull it off, you have easy opportunities to chip up and make early birdies. And if you look at the totals, like you talked about with Henrik Stenson making 25 birdies, I do think the birdie total you're going to need this week to win is in the 20s. Like you're going to have to make 20 birdies this week to win the golf tournament. So you're going to have days in which you have a hot putter on the front nine, and then days in which you just ball strike the crap out of it on the back to where you go shoot a 2 or 3 under on the back with just really pristine ball striking. But avoiding the big number on the back nine is going to be the key.
So it's interesting in hearing you talk about that sort of risk reward trade off of, hey, guys that are aggressive and pull it off, can make the numbers they need to make to really distance themselves from the rest of the field. So much of that to me is weather dependent, right? Because if you're, if it's downwind, you obviously can do a lot more in terms of carry, numbers and reaching at the front of the greens and giving yourselves, scoring clubs or even, having a putter in your hand on par fours that change the complexion of the tournament. But if that wind switches, it's a completely different ball game. And so I got the forecast
southwest.
Well, so I'm looking at, it's okay. That's because I'm looking at the forecast right now for let's start with Thursday. And so I'm seeing south to south east winds.
You're seeing south to southeast.
Yeah, that's what if you're starting at 7 a.m. it's south southeast, and then it's all south the rest of the day. And it's like,
well, guess what it was today? It was northwest, so that was down off the right. So 1 today, that's in off the right at like 1 o'clock, which makes the back nine play easier, and it makes the front play. It just forces your hand on the front nine basically to lay up.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just so curious to see because in terms of the numbers, like you're seeing winds that should be between 8 to 12 mile per hour, but gusts up to like 30 miles an hour and this is on Thursday. And then it looks like rain is in between 70 to 80% chance on Thursday. The rain chance on Friday is a lot lower. It's between 10 and 20%. But the wind is still there, maybe not as strong as Thursday. It's saying the consistent will be between 6 to 10 miles per hour, and then gusts will get up to about 27 miles per hour. But the wind direction, same sort of thing. We're seeing some south to start the day, then going south southwest, and then later in the evening back to south. And so, it does, again, it emphasizes the point you're making about Jack Nicklaus, where especially here at the Open Championship, you can't show up with a game plan because the game plan for the north winds is a lot different from the south winds. So you kind of noted there on the front nine how that changes things. I mean, does that change if you're seeing guys today hitting 4 and 5 irons? Like, is that driver in hand if the wind's going south, or is it still the way it's going to run on the ground? It's still going to be an iron or a driving iron or something like that in hand off the tee.
It's going to turn into the front nine playing much softer than it normally would. The back nine, you're so accustomed, or excuse me, the front nine, you're so accustomed to landing wedge shots at the front of the green. And a lot of times front pins, you're landing at 10 yards short of the green. So it turns it a little bit more into the ball flying towards the hole and the ball stopping quicker. So the wedge and approach shots become arguably easier to get closer to the holes in which they tuck it on the corners, which they can do on the first couple holes. Like they can hide these pins behind pot bunkers, which I think is the risk reward factor in hitting driver when it's downwind on those holes. But if it's right to left or in on the first couple holes or the first 7 holes, I think it kind of gives you an opportunity to play aggressively. And the ball might, instead of rolling out 60 yards, maybe driver is, because it's in an in off the right wind, is only rolling 10 to 15 yards. So it makes that area in which, you're worried about a 60-yard area as far as just where you land it and where the ball finishes rolling. So the 60 yards actually, it's a lot smaller of an area than you would realize when it gets downwind. But if it's in off the right now, that ball is not going to roll out as much. You can play it aggressively and give yourself shorter distances to the hole and a golf ball that actually will be a little bit more receptive into those greens. And then the controversy on the back nine, more left or right winds, maybe a touchdown at times. Instead of today, it was in off the left. And Adam Scott on 10 hit 6-iron. On the 11th hole, he hit a 2-iron. The 12th hole, he hit a wedge, 13, 4-iron, 14, 3-iron, 15, 3-iron, 16, 3-iron, 17. Oh no, 16 is a par 5. 17 was a 3-iron, then 18 like a middle iron. Just insane how hard that northwest wind is.
It is the headline from all this for me is, man, this is going to be a fun week to watch, because there's no like standard, this is the way it's going to play. There's no like, this is clearly the guy that's going to benefit. It's going to be whoever figures out a way to golf their ball the best in a lot of changing conditions and in a very unique sort of venue. And that's why link style golf is so great.
I'm going to walk you through the 15th hole.
Okay, please.
And I'll pull up the book because I think it's a perfect illustration of what these guys are facing off the tee. And if you can see that clearly.
Okay, yeah.
Can you kind of see that clearly?
Yeah, I can see that, yeah.
So the bunkers up on the right, you see those bunkers? The carry number is the red number. So that red number on the right looks to be, the first one is 267 carry. The second was 290 yards carry.
Okay.
And the wind, let's say it's a southwest wind, straight off the left. So now, like today, like you couldn't even. It was a northwest wind today, which was brutal. But,
wait, are you telling me it's a left to right wind that could gust up to 30 miles an hour?
Yes.
Can we shut this record off right now? Can I go like take some anti-anxiety medicine?
Exactly. But the options that it's given you now with a 290 yard cover in a left to right wind, like you actually have an opportunity to blast it over those right bunkers where you can aim up the left and just say, eliminate the left side. Let's go hit it in the right junk and go and find it. Now there's certain areas of the golf course in which you got to know this is the areas that the fescue is up. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of the players kind of know which sides that is. Like 13, for instance, Adam was telling me that the right side is much worse than the left. Like they kind of know which sides to favor as far as the fescue goes. But it's just so interesting because if you played today, you could psych yourself out pretty bad knowing that maybe the 15th hole, if you hit a good drive and it's a little down off the left, like a southwest wind, you're going to be looking at wedges and 9-irons in the back nine, which is totally what these guys have not played this week, which I think this wind that you're talking about will bunch up scoring. I think it's a scoring wind that it's not going to separate quite as much. I think you'll see not as many big numbers because although if it's a super gusty, maybe that will get the numbers up a little bit. But I think that northwest wind is much more difficult, and you would see plenty more guys really struggle in that wind. I think you'll see a lot of guys kind of be in that couple under, 2-3 under range in that first round and kind of continue to see that thing bunch up as the weekend progresses. Yeah,
I just jumped ahead to Saturday and Sunday out of curiosity, and it looks like the wind we'll get a little more in the way of west wind, especially as we move into Sunday, but largely it's going to be that kind of southwest wind. And the speed should be just about the same. You're looking at like anywhere from 6 to 8, which is, not a ton of wind for your sort of steady wind, and then gusts that are, actually looks like Saturday, the gusts only get up to 20 miles an hour, which isn't, crazy for Scotland. And then Sunday they're back up in that like mid to high 20s range, with a little bit stronger. So yeah. And then moving sort of west. So if that wind holds and scoring stays bunched, that should make for at least an entertaining Open Championship at the very least. So from there, Smiley, as we've kind of done for these majors, we've kind of started with maybe 3 big names that have the largest sort of storylines around them, discuss those 3, and then we've kind of moved into the rest of the field and, of course, our one-and-done pick. So the three that I'd love to kind of start with and have a bigger conversation about are Scottie, Rory, and Jon Rahm for very different reasons. And so let's just kind of start with Scottie, the odds-on favorite. He is plus 450, which is 9-2. Rory is the next shortest odds on the board at plus 850, but Scottie's form coming in, T8 at the PGA, T2 at the Schwab, 1 at the Memorial, T41 at the US Open, and 1 the Travelers. So it's at this point, it's doubt Scottie at your own risk. I'm curious as to your opinion on Scottie's played in 3 Open championships. And if you're looking at the 4 majors, it's the one that he's had relatively the least amount of success in. He's had 1 top 10 in Open championship, and then his other 2 finishes are outside the top 20 in those 3 starts. You compare that to the Masters, of course, where he's won twice. He's had a top 10, no finish worse than 19th in 5 starts. At the PGA, he's had 2 top 5s, 2 top 10s. He has missed the cut there. The US Open, 2 top 5s, 1 top 10, and 1 missed cut in 5 starts. And so, look, he's only played in 3 Opens. I'm not saying he's not going to succeed. He can go out and win this year, and then it's a completely different script. But what do you make of Scottie's game? We've seen do very well stateside, how that travels across the pond?
I mean, it's an automatic top 10. I don't see a way in which this golf course doesn't just perfectly suit his game.
Really?
Because you just have to hit it so well and be able to hold crosswinds, which is, I think this week is going to be a lot about holding crosswinds left to right and right to left, because that wind that you're talking about is going to be very tons and tons of crosswinds. And Scottie's so good at doing that. So I'll start there with the ball striking, that it's a really good fit. I'm a little concerned about just putting on slower greens and wind. I think that would be something that can he be just above average in putting this week? Because I could see a world in which the slower greens give him issues and just a little bit more of the bumpiness, and not able to hold 10, 15 foot putts. I could see that being a big part of the storyline with Scottie Scheffler this week. And if he doesn't win, it's going to be because of the putter, because we all know how good of a ball striker he is. We know what he's going to show up with, and it feels almost bulletproof that he's going to hit it really well and probably be top 3 in the ball striking statistics, if not most likely number 1.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I land with Scottie. You got to trust that Ted Scott's going to have a good idea of what, to be able to avoid all the bunkers, get the right clubs in his hands. But also, we kind of talked a little bit about Scottie, and were you worried about his form coming into the week, not playing the Scottish, having some time off. But him getting here on Saturday, I think kind of falls in line with playing the golf course, being comfortable with the conditions, and just knowing how it's going to play in the runouts. So that just makes me love Scottie even more this week. I think I love Scottie to win. If you're somebody that likes to place Scottie bets, I think Scottie's the guy to beat. The odds obviously show it. It's like, oh, dude, no way. You think Scottie's going to win this week? I just think there's a lot of things lining up that I really like. But if he doesn't win, I think the putter is going to be the reason why, because of the slow greens, the bumpiness, and the wind.
Yeah, at this rate, it's we do all these shows, we talk about all these players, who could win, and then we fast forward to Monday and Scottie's won by 4 shots. And, oh, okay, yeah, what a shocker once again. So it'll be interesting. I mean, I think that it makes a ton of sense, right? This is a guy who has immense command of his golf ball. Can draw it, can cut it, can do all these sorts of things to kind of play into the wind at this space.
He can hold shots, man. You can hold shots.
Yeah, so it's
nobody's better than that.
Yeah, and I mean, and with a guy like Ted Scott on his bag, in terms of how they're going to game plan around this course and how that game plan is going to adjust as the conditions adjust. You got to love where he's positioned. Rory, of course, second player on that odds board, plus 850, 17-2. His form coming in, also in great form. PGA tied for 12th, Canadian Open tied for 4th, Memorial tied for 15th. U.S. Open, of course, had the famous second place finish, and then Scottish Open most recently tied for 4th. With Rory, and I'm going to go in a similar direction in talking about Rahm after this, it is kind of zooming out a little bit. You know, we've heard a lot from Rory this year and a lot of different things. We've heard some comments of late where he's been quite introspective on things. If he wins this major, you know, as he's one of the favorites to do, how do you think Rory looks back on these past 2 years where he's got, you know, he's looking for that 5th major win? He has a near miss at LACC. He has a near miss at Pinehurst. There's, of course, that wonky miscut at Augusta in 2023. I mean, of course, anytime you win a major, you celebrate that. It feels like a success. But just given all that he's had to deal with on and off the course in these last 2 years, you know, what would this win mean to him? And, like, what do you think, you know, he's looking back and saying, you know, how it all went for him leading up to this point?
I think it's just all about getting in the mix for Roars, because I think any time that, you know, I think about over the last couple of years of him having a legitimate chance, you know, I think about LA. He was right there in LA. Like a mistake at the 14th hole, making a bogey on that par 5 was, you know, kind of let Wyndham limp a little bit to the finish as someone that has not won a major championship, and having that extra breathing room, you know, that was a mistake. But I mean, he's played so well over the last couple of years. It's just, it feels like one of these events, everything's going to go his way, and everything was going his way at the U.S. Open. And maybe he's able to draw on the experience of like you and I have talked about, of, you know, how well he really did play on Sunday at the U.S. Open. He chipped and putted it tremendously up until, you know, the 16th hole and obviously the 18th hole. But I think that the elements that it takes to win golf tournaments, it's not easy. It's hard to win golf tournaments. You need to put yourself in position. It's not easy to put yourself in a position, but he seems to do it, you know, more often than not. So I would, just looking at the golf course and where his game's at, sure would be surprised to not see, you know, where he's not in the mix come Sunday. I think the parts of his games that I like is that he's able to hit a tee down driver. You know, that shot that he can just stand a little closer to it, bring the flight down and chasing down some fairways with driver. I get a little worried about maybe his iron game and crosswinds. I think that would be one of the biggest things. I would be like, man, his iron game, if you had to point at something this year that isn't as good as it was last year, at times I felt like his iron game, like at last year's Open Championship, dude, he was striping it with his irons last year. Just the putter went cold. So we'll see if this week he's able to kind of be able to hit those hold shots, which I'm a little concerned about, because I've seen him this year kind of get caught between fades and draws and what he sees. And when you throw a bunch of wind, that can cause a little indecision as far as, you know, where your bottom is and what type of shots you want to play. Because he's felt more comfortable this year hitting higher shots and not as much with the lower shots. He does a really good job of it with the driver. But that would be my cause of just my concern with Rory this week, is how well he can hold crosswinds. Can he avoid the bunkers? And can the putter, if he does, you know, if he handles those check marks that we just talked about with the ball striking, could he catch a hot putter and do what he did like we saw at the U.S. Open?
Yeah, I think back to your conversation with Trevor Immelman and talking about, you know, his performance in majors, and his thing was like, hey, you know, at some point Rory has to want to run into a hot putter. And, you know, you flash back to the 2022 Open Championship at St. Andrews, where he doesn't have that. And Cam Smith is in a group, you know, a group ahead of him with the hot putter and eventually winning that major. And then you think, you know, towards the end of the U.S. Open we just watched, where it wasn't necessarily that he didn't have a hot putter, but he's had a really cold one at the end. A couple misses cost him that major. So, I mean, this week, you know, it's a red fescue surface that's different from, you know, everything else that they play for the rest of the year, it's a little bit slower.
A little bouncier.
Yeah, a little bouncier. So we'll see. But I mean, obviously a guy that we expect to be in the mix there at the end, and then kind of moving from there to Jon Rahm, which is a guy we talked about every single major this year. And every conversation we have changes a little bit, just reflecting on his year in general. It's insane to think, if someone told me before the Live announcement, that Jon Rahm, the fourth major of the year, his odds to win would be 25-1. I'd be like, you're insane. Give me that right now, sight unseen. And his form just had a tie for 10th at Live Singapore. I'm sorry, this is his going back 5 tournaments. He had a tie for 10th at Live Singapore. He missed the cut at the PGA Championship. He withdrew from the Live Houston event, and then subsequently withdrew from the U.S. Open. And then he was tied for 3rd at Live Nashville, and then tied for 10th most recently at Valderrama at the Live event there. So here's just a few stats from our guy Sean Laurie, just pertaining to Jon's first season on Live. So he's second in individual points right now, but and he does not have a finish worse than 10th this entire season, but somehow is 9th in individual earnings. And it's an interesting sort of picture, because his best finish, he's never finished better than tied for 3rd on Live this season. He's done that 3 times. And then you look at his major record this year: T45 at the Masters, miscut the PGA, and of course withdraws from the U.S. Open. So I think, a lot of information there, but just reflecting on the year he's had, and then also looking at this week and saying, man, how important is a good finish going to be for Jon Rahm, so we can look back at this year and feel like it wasn't a total loss.
Yeah, and that's I picked Rahm and my one and done, and at Valhalla, just was so confused why he played poorly there. I don't know what happened. Just didn't have it. Struggled with his ball striking, and the putter you could tell he was trying to force it a little bit on Friday, and just ended up missing the cut, which was just shocking to me, because I really felt like Rahm was going to have a good week. He was leading the tour in birdies, and like you said, top 10. He just hadn't won yet. I am coming around to Rahm this week, because
interesting,
when I've watched Rahm play in the past, he's an excellent driver of the ball. He's a very good iron player. I just think about the shots on the front 9 he's going to have. I think his ability to hit fades up against that right to left wind and in off the right wind, I like him a ton on the front 9. And then when we switch the other way, he doesn't typically draw anything off the tee, but he can draw his irons when he needs to. And when I think about just holding a left to right 20-mile-an-hour crosswind with a 5-iron, he can hit that shot. And there's not many guys that can hit that shot and do it both ways. Rahm can hit the shot. So when we talk about what is going to be, the metrics, the key metrics that are, defining guys this week to be successful, it's that. Can you control your ball in crosswinds and down and into the wind, and how much control do you really have? And Rahm does. So if you're somebody that wants to buy low on that 25-1 spot with Rahm, I don't hate it, because if of the 3 guys that we just talked about, give me Jon Rahm every day with the putter on these type of greens, because I love the way in which he rolls. He gets the ball rolling on the ground quickly. It just looks like it's hunting for the hole. He's not afraid to be aggressive putting on these greens, which last year I thought the biggest mistake for Rory was that he was too conservative on the greens, was dying balls into the hole. Rory's always putting better to me when the ball has that momentum rolling into the hole. So and Rahm always putts that way. So I like Rahm on the greens this week. I think the ball striking, I think if you come around to the fact that you just erase what we've seen for a couple of the majors this year and think, okay, you're going to need somebody who's really gritty, tough, somebody that can ball strike the crap out of it and not afraid to go and make 20 birdies. Dude, Jon Rahm checks a ton of boxes.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly does. And I think shoot, we just talked about last week, coming off the Scottish Open, of you're looking at recent form, you're thinking maybe, why would we be picking Robert McIntyre? And then you get on the back end of the week and you're like, oh, it was so obvious. And this same thing for all the reasons you just listed could be, you get to the end of the term and you're like, clearly one of the most talented players in the world. And everything here sets up for a guy like him with his mentality and the way he putts and all that to win a major. It's hard to go all in on a guy that's shown you what he's shown you this season, but maybe that's even more motivation for him, right?
Fair.
Like maybe that's even more motivation for him to like go out and say, I'm not letting this year go to waste. I mean, in some ways, I think that's going to be Rory's story too, is that with all the near misses, he almost feels like he has to go out and make something happen this week. And I, be curious to see how both of them respond to that type of pressure.
Yeah, no, totally. I think this golf course, like Pinehurst, like Rory was so good about getting up and down around the greens, and like his pitching was fantastic. This golf course, when you get into the bunkers, I found it, although the whips to be very intimidating, a lot of guys weren't having very many issues today. I know it's a practice round, but guys were able to kind of get it up and down around the greens, even off the greens. There was about 3 or 4 holes that come to mind that were very difficult. If you got like the 13th hole is very challenging, but there's some steep banks on some holes, like the 10th hole that's very challenging. But aside from 4 or 5 holes, the chipping around the greens, not overly complicated. I think it's not going to be something that's going to win you the golf tournament. It's just something that I think everybody's going to do fairly well. And I don't think you'll get tons of separation. And that's excluding the 8th hole, the postage stamp, which is going to have a higher variance. But if you remove that from the variance charts of strokes gained around the green, I think for the most part, it's going to be difficult to gain in that category to win this golf tournament. I think the key metrics to look at this week are ball striking, and then can you get a round in which you're making 10 to 15 footers?
Love that. It makes a ton of sense. And I think, we're getting close here to making our one and done picks, kind of getting to the guys we really like. Quick group of names I'm going to read you coming off the group I just did that are all shorter than 20-1. So, kind of that next wave of guys who are favorites. Xander Schauffele at 11-1, Ludwig Oberg 16-1, Colin Morikawa 16-1, and Bryson DeChambeau 18-1. All names that make a ton of sense in that range. Of course, Bryson's won a major this year, as has Xander. Colin Morikawa has played about as good as you could play this season without winning a major. And Ludwig, a guy who came close to the Masters and, feels like has a game that fits this type of venue. So Smiley, it's one and done time.
I listen to this podcast. It's really cool. And
all of our local fans and subscribers, but make sure you like and subscribe.
It's cool to see what you guys are doing. I know golf fans appreciate it, but we do too. So please keep it up.
For all the good people of YouTube, like and subscribe.
You guys have some good takes, so I'm happy to come on and shoot the